This world so turned around to deserve what is a world. You are a child of God's creation. You're the light of the world. You are God in the flesh. And as you away, you must confess, I am fearful, my God, to reveal what was said in the beginning. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Good morning, family. We'll be getting started here shortly. Come on, sing a song with me right when you're alone and scared, when your old friends swore to put you down, because you changed, and everything seems to be going wrong. Go back to well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's edition of Serendipity Sunday. I pray things are well with each of you as you rise into this new day, this next day. We're listening to the beautiful sounds of Ricky Byers-Beckwith and the Agape International Choir. That song was entitled Genesis. And we'll be getting started here shortly. Give everybody opportunity to get settled in, situated for this morning's message. While we're waiting for the song to come to its conclusion, I want to welcome those of you who are joining on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that way in the future you will get the notifications, and also you will have access to many other features that come along with being a subscriber. Today is the 24th of October. We've moved right through this month. Next week when we convene, I think we'll be in the beginning of the month of November. Well, it's good to see my Zoomers this morning, those who are in the sanctuary. Angela, good to see you. Courtney, Myrna. Hey, Myrna, how are you doing? Good morning to Renee. Good to see you this morning, Renee, and all those who will be coming on board. All right, we're going to get started. Welcome to this morning's edition of Serendipity Sunday. I am Asar, also known as Greg Stanton, your host for this particular presentation. Each and every Sunday, we are out here at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. It's about a 30-minute presentation of a topic that will jumpstart your week. And this week, we're dealing with the topic of manifestation. It's important that we all come into the realization that we are God's handiwork, created in Christ, that is in the consciousness of Christ, to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So the good works, the abilities, a good work is to create that which you desire. And many of us don't have any clue that we create the lives that we currently are living inside of. So I want to explore that this morning. If you got the email, you see there was a picture of a hand, actually a hand molding a clay pot. That is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And the title of today's message is The Work of the Manifester. The Work of the Manifester. That song we were listening to is entitled Genesis. And we understand all there is to be understood in the book of Genesis. If we go to the book of Genesis and we exegete it properly, if we really take some time and look at it beyond the surface messages that are presented, we'll come to the conclusion of who we are, whose we are. We'll have a real understanding of all that has been created in the process of creation. Now, when we talk about the process of creation, we're talking about manifestation. So this morning's message has to do with the work of the manifester. And the question is, who is the manifester? So many of us will respond immediately by saying, and being quite true, that the manifester is God, source, divine intelligence. All of that is true. But I want to dig a little deeper this morning. I want to expose you to a little known truth that is essential for you to operate in the LOA, that is the law of attraction. I know for the last 15 to 20 years, the law of attraction has been a big conversation, particularly inside of the community of life coaches, where a lot of people are teaching or giving the information about how to attract. And that's a hot topic right now because people are dissatisfied with the lives they are living. And they're coming to the realization that they have the ability to attract into their lives the things they desire, as well as the things that they are experiencing currently that doesn't really represent sources or God's highest, greatest good for them, is actually the result of the principles of the law of attraction that they may be applying by default. And the reason why I say that they are applying them by default, because the reality is we are not taught in traditional religious circles, we are really not taught the true or the full essence of who we are and what we can do, and even our assignment. This past week, we started, or the last couple of weeks, I've been dealing with the topic of maximizing your potential or peak performance in Saturday's at Saturday School. And so it kind of dovetails right into that if you want to be peak performance, you must know your potential. And in order to activate your potential or to really operate inside of your potential, you must be willing to have some experiences that develop you. So here in Earth School, that is living in this realm that we all are living in, if you're breathing, if you're picking up this message, you picking up through the sensory realm, you are in Earth School. And one of the things about Earth School that is so different from our traditional educational institutions is that Earth School does not pass you along merely because of time or your age, But Earth School only passes you when you are able to pass the practicum. What is the practicum? The practicum is a situation, a circumstance that you have, and you have the information to really apply it. And if you apply it, you pass. If you don't apply it, you go back to start until you get to the place of just applying it. Now, in Christianity, that is the spiritual system that I grew up in. That's the spiritual system that I practice. Although the way I practice Christianity today is very different from how I practiced it 10, 15 years ago. I have really taken a deeper dive into the scriptures to find out the hidden messages, because that which is obvious is obviously not working. And so I have had this conversation with many of people. As a spiritual life coach, many times people come to me and they will divulge or they will disclose to me the inner thinkings as it pertains to their spiritual practice. They even go as far as says that they don't know if they really believe in God anymore. And it's a safe space to have that conversation, because if you have that conversation inside of the traditional religious communities, you'll begin to be called a heretic. You'll begin to be cautioned that you're on the slippery slope to hell. So people don't have the conversation they need to have to express themselves and to move beyond what they're dealing with. And so this morning we want to really explore. We want to explore who God is, or what source is, and how that relates to us. And I'm going to start with this. The scripture tells us in Genesis. I love Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. If you understand Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, you understand the story. You will have a deeper appreciation, excuse me, a deeper appreciation for this story. If you begin to look at it not as a history lesson, but a mystery lesson, you begin to look at it not from the perspective that it is talking about things revealed as much as it's talking about unrevealed things. Now, the scripture tells us that for God, now we need to know some essential things about the character of God. One of the characteristics of God is that it operates. Now, when I use the term God, I'm using it as a term of familiarity, but I prefer not to use the term God because it's limiting in nature. And so the biggest mistake we make is by trying to define God. And when you define God as, or define source, define the creator, when you use a word like God, it automatically imposes a cultural norm or a cultural screen over, it veils the true essence of source, of divine intelligence, of the manifester, or bottom line, the creator. So I prefer to use the term it. And many times when you say the word it in the religious circles, they'll say that you're almost blaspheming God because you are making it very impersonal. Well, I say just the different. When you use the term it to describe the creator, you are making it more inclusive and expanding the possibilities of understanding who it is. So when we look in the scriptures, it says, in the beginning, God created. In the beginning, it created. The very essence of source, divine intelligence. And for the sake of this message, when I say God or it, I'm talking about the same thing, is that at its essence, it's a creator. It's expansive in nature. Now, why do you need to know that? Because in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we come into the realization of a creation, the creation. We see the 6 days of creation, how things were created, and we see the creation of man, and then we see on the seventh day, a rest is entered into. You don't enter into rest until you've worked. So the 6 days of creation shows the work of God. Now, the sixth day, we see that we are created, and the scripture tells us that we are God's handiwork. So we're created by the hands of God. And so there's something to be learned by that. And one of my favorite stories is found in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 18, that talks about going down to the potter's house. And in this story, the potter has the clay on his spinning wheel, and the potter is creating a jar or an item. And as he's creating it, as it is creating it, see, as we have a tendency to superimpose the idea that source, divine intelligence, is a male. In order to create anything, it takes both energies, male and female, the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And source is all of that in one, as well as you are all of that in one. You represent, there is a divine masculine aspect to who you are, as well as there is a divine feminine aspect, and you just so happen to be encapsulated in a physical body that defines you on the material or the level of matter as male and female. But you don't ever want to allow yourself to be defined exclusively by your phenotype, that is, by your culture. Or you don't want to be defined by your gender. You want to be defined as a divine spiritual being having a human experience. So we see in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, the story of creation. For those who are unaware, it's the same story told in two ways. In Genesis chapter 1, we see the idea. We see the thought of God. We see in the thought of God, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. So it was in the field of possibilities. Even though when God thinks a thing, that thing is on the way of expression or manifestation. It comes into immediate manifestation. Now, when you look in Genesis chapter 1, it's the unfolding from the spiritual to Genesis chapter 2 to the natural. So you see two same story told twice, but the first storytelling of the story in Genesis chapter 1 can be looked at as the spiritual creation. And then Genesis chapter 2 can be looked at as the manifestation of creation, the manifestation. And we're going to look at that. So here's a principle you need to know. The scripture says, for God, things are spiritual before natural. Now, you may say that's true. And if we are created in its image and after its likeness as divine spiritual beings having a human expression, for us, they are to be spiritual first and then natural. But for individuals who are just human beings, things are natural before spiritual. They have to have the natural manifestation, a natural experience before they can understand the spiritual experience. But we needn't have that same mindset when we understand who we are and our design as spiritual beings. So we operate first and foremost as spiritual beings. Now, there's 4 domains to us as the human species. The human species has 3 domains that they operate inside of, and the 4th is dormant. The 3 domains that we operate in is first the mental. Second domain is the emotional. The third domain is our physical selves. But those who are human beings, you see that they spend the vast majority of life dealing with either their mental or their intellect, or they're dealing with their emotional baggage, or they're controlled by emotions, or they are physical beings that are controlled by their physical essence, concerned about their physical essence. And that's the totality of who they are. Oh, then they may slip over into the fourth domain, veiled as religion. But when you walk inside of religion, religion is just an attempt to tie man back to, or to tie man to some concepts about the creator, some concepts about the divine intelligence, the concept of God. But if you're a divine spiritual being, you start off with that fourth domain being the most important domain. That's why we are to remember the work of Christ is to have us remember to reattach this very important aspect of who we are, the realm of the spirit. So for those who are divine spiritual beings, we are spirit first, and then we impose our spiritual essence into the other three domains. And so if you want to be perfect, whole, and complete, you must identify the four domains and making sure that they are working in collaboration. The other three domains, the domain of mental, emotional, and physical, are subservient to the spiritual domain. If the three domains, any aspect of the three domains is your calling card or is what you operate inside of most, then the spirit domain is held hostage. It's being grieved. And so that's happening for most because they're not aware of that domain. They are aware of it in the sense of through religion, but religion is tying you to concepts. Religion is tying you to ideologies. Religion is tying you to principles that oftentimes are not even practiced. Even we talk about love. Love is a principle that is espoused inside of all the religions, but when you look at the turmoil in this world, it has to do with the misapplication of love, only loving those who look like you, talk like you, identify as you. But true love is this, it's long suffering. Love makes space for differences. Love does not impose itself on someone. Love does not strong arm an individual. So the concept of love that we find in religion does not really align with the concept of love coming from the spiritual domain. For God is love. Now, the way God has been presented to us in the Bible is not a very loving and kind God. And as a result of that, many of us who walk inside of Christianity at some point in our lives have had to come face to face with the question of, am I pleasing God? So the pleasing of God was tied to performance. But when there is true love, performance does not dictate the relationship, but relationship is dictated by relationship, by relating to. So back to what I was saying. So when you look at Genesis chapter 1, you see the spiritual creation of all that has been created. And chapter 2, you see the creation evolving into being manifested. So even in Genesis chapter 1, you may say, if you read Genesis chapter 1, matter of fact, let me grab my Bible here. If you read in Genesis chapter 1, it says, in the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, I'm reading from the authorized version. Notice it's an authorized version, so there are other versions. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. That's Genesis chapter 1. That was the first day. And it says, and God said, let there be firmament in the midst of the waters. And it goes on for 6 days. And then God finally said, saw that it was good. And in Genesis chapter 2, it tells you in verse 1, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day. So Genesis chapter 2 affirms that everything has been made manifest. Now, let's take a moment and look at that word manifest. Now, many of us, the word manifest is a word that is often used in the way of manifested. When we talk about manifesting something, that's a big word in the earth today, amongst life coaches, amongst individuals who are inside of New Thought, talking about manifest. So I took some time and I kind of looked up this term manifest. I looked up the etymology, because oftentimes when we use a word, we use it based on the local use of it, the slang of it. And many times we don't really visit the original word. So most time I will take some time and I'll check the etymology of a word that I'm really digging into. The word manifest as an adjective, it means clearly revealed to the eye. So it's something that is revealed to the eye. So if it's not revealed to the eye, what is it revealed to? It's in the spirit realm. So manifest, clearly revealed to the eye or the understanding, open to view or comprehension. The old form or the old French manifest means evident, palpable, or directly from the Latin word manifestus, plainly, apprehensible, clear, apparent, evident of offenses, proved by direct evidence of the offender, caught in the act. So the word manifest means to be caught in the act, to be seen. It's two words, man and fest. There's also, so I went a little deeper, and you see there's man and festus. Both are Latin, and manus, festus, manifest. The first part of that word, manus, means hand. Now that's interesting. The word manifest has to do with the hand, and then festus is a Latin word that we get the word evident. So manifestus is plainly, apprehensible, clear, apparent, evident, proved by direct evidence. That's faith. Faith is the evidence of things hoped for. Come on now. Now it says, now faith is the evidence of things hoped for. Come on, let me go to Hebrews chapter 11. I want to read that to you. And it's so key that we understand all of these things. What we do is we understand them independent of one another versus really coming to see all of these things tied together. In Hebrews 11, it says, now faith is the substance. There it is. Not faith is substance, is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So that's manifestation. That is manifest. And so why is it important that we know this? So when we talk about manifest, that is to show plainly. And so in the first chapter of Genesis, we see the manifestation, but it's not shown plainly, it's spoken to. But in the second chapter, when God rests, it is all evident. Now, when we talk about the word manifest, there's another word you can use. And most of the times we use this, we don't use the word or the term manifest to define God. We use the term creator. But the reality is God is a manifestor. The word manifestor with the OR represents the creation by an individual, by a human. So we are all creators as well as manifestors. So if you really want to be proficient in creating or manifesting the life you desire and all those things that make up for that, you must first understand the essence of God and the fact that you have been designed in His image after His likeness. Now, why does that matter? Okay, here's why it matters. When you understand that you're created in His image after His likeness, Then you have the propensity to do at a macro level, micro level, that which it does at a macro level. So if the word tells us, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That is through the Christ conscious, the awareness. So the awareness of what? That I and God are one. I and the Father are one. Getting to the place where you can say, you are a manifestation of the Creator. If you've seen the created thing, you've seen a part of the Creator. So just as well as if I look at a piece of artwork that's designed, either is by Van Gogh or it's by your local favorite artist, or even as yourself as a creative, that thing represents you. It represents your work. So when we talk about manifestation, it's the work of your hands. Now, this is where the rubber begins to hit the road. God doesn't have, Source doesn't have hands in the sense of physical hands, but the fact that we were created in his image after his likeness tells us that it has spiritual hands, and that it has a spiritual mouth, and it has everything that we have in the natural, Source has in the spirit, but it's all inclusive. That with that being said, we have to understand that you have hands that work in collaboration with your thought. Now, when God creates something, it first starts with a thought. If we go to John chapter 1, let me take you there. John 1:1 is really where we're going to go to this morning. I want to show you how God or Source creates, how it manifests. And so it's an example of what we should do or how we should be operating. It says in the beginning was the Word, John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Okay. The Word was with the manifester, and the Word was God. The Word was it. The Word was the manifester. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by it, and without it was not anything made that was made. Now, let me reframe this for you. Okay, consciousness is something that we have to become aware of. Okay, in terms we have to begin to interact with. So God is consciousness. It's everywhere in everything, and I like to use the word imagination because our consciousness is our imagination, and imagination represents the field of potentiality, or is only limited to what you use to define it as. So let's look at John chapter 1 in a different way. I'm going to transpose wherever there is God, I'm going to use imagination. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was the Word was imagination, and the imagination was God. The same was in the beginning with God. So the imagination, if you're created in the image and after likeness of Source or God, your imagination is key to you, because it's from the imagination that we get the image. And it's through the image that we get it starts with a thought. The thought is created into an image, and the image is held in an intention, and it is spoken. So the speaking of that thing, it is important. Now, to speak something doesn't necessarily mean to speak verbally, but to send a strong intention. It could be a thought. So when we see the scripture that says, as a man thinks, so is he. It doesn't even say as a man speaks, but what you speak is a direct relationship to what you say. So if your thinking is on one thing, ultimately your speaking will align with that. And then the word tells us that you can tell a fool by one who just speaks. So we got to make sure we're not saying any and everything, but the things we speak out of our mouths are consistent with what we are seeking to develop, to manifest, or to create. So in the beginning was the word, okay, or thought. Let's put it like this. In the beginning was thought, and thought was the imagination, and the imagination and thought was God. So thought and imagination. Thought produces imagination. So I'm showing you how we manifest. When we look at what is going on in the earth today, everything that is manifested or that is coming forth in the earth is a direct result of what man has projected. And not only what man has projected in the way of thought, but the work of man's hands. So faith is the evidence in action. I mean, faith is what you desire taken to intention, resulting in an action, the work of your hands. So, you can't say that many of us think that everything we have created in our life comes directly from the work of our hands, but there's a process. Some of the things that are coming forth in your life require your hand, require your effort, but the vast majority of what comes into your life is coming forth because of what you have expressed. Now, because we don't know the power of our words, we express, we emote a lot of things unfiltered, unchecked. That's why the word tells us you have to guard your thoughts. You got to make sure your thoughts are in alignment with what you want to experience. And if you don't guard your thought, you have all kinds of things showing up in your life. You may say, well, I didn't create that. Well, you probably don't remember or recall when you held that thought, when you expressed that fear. Fear is a strong emotion that sends a signal, and it picks up and brings back to you the matching experience. So you got to be very careful if you want to really live a life that is reflective of your highest and greatest good. You got to be more mindful, aware, conscious of what you're thinking, and then what you're speaking. Why is that important? When we look in Genesis, we see that's how Source did it. It thought it, imagined it, spoke it, holding it in intention. And when you hold something in intention, you build an expectation. So that's the process of creation. Now, we can see God as creator, but the essence of this morning's message is called the work of the manifester. Who is the manifester? When we look at the potter, it's the manifester of the clay pot that it's creating, whatever it's creating. That also represents you. Too many of us are waiting on something outside of ourselves to do what we've been designed to do. Now, why do I want you to know that? Because we always got to take it back to Genesis chapter 1, where it says we're created in His image, after His likeness, and we're given our divine assignment. And the divine assignment is that we are to have dominion, to have control over our lives. Now, I can't have control. I was never told to have control. You were never told to have control over anybody else. But religion has a tendency to give people control. It gives the bishops, the ecclesia, the control over those who are in the pews. Religion has given usurped its authority over certain people groups and sanctioned certain people groups to certain estates, lower states, higher states. All that is the work of religion. But when you talk about spirituality, it's talking about expanding something to its full ability, making space for individuals to show up as they are, and evolve into what they are to become. So when we understand in Genesis chapter 1, we're created in his image, imagination, imaging. So whatever image you have of God, you're created in that. So if you see God as one who is very judgmental, if you see God as one who is very punitive, then that's your life experience is going to be that way. That is, you're going to always equate to, if I do good, I'll get good. If I do bad, I'm going to get bad. And that's the life you live. And then it don't make space for the experience of life. You want to avoid the uncomfortableness of being out of what you would say is the will of God. But the will of God is for you to do what represents your highest and greatest good. Source never imposes or asks of you anything that's not aligned with what your purpose, what your design, what you came here to do, be, or have. And so many times when we say we want to know the will of God, it's really saying that you need to take time and get clear on what it is you came here to do. And when you understand what you came here to do, or what you came here to show up as, then you know what naturally you should be manifesting as. And that's really, really key. That with the scripture that I was sharing with you this morning is key to all of our understanding when it comes to what we are to be doing and what we are to be manifested as. It's Ephesians 2:10. It says we are sources, or its handiwork. There we are. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, 27 shows the handiwork. So that's just as in Jeremiah, it talks about the potter. And that's a metaphor for we've been created on the will of God. Now, here's what's even deeper. Take it away from God to you. You are the God, and the pot represents your life. What are you creating? What are you manifesting? And the thing that you can come away from within this story is when the potter was forming that object, and he said it was marred, it was imperfect. But know this, you are perfect, whole, and complete in the spiritual domain. Now you have to transpose that and bring it forward in the natural domain, where you can show up in the natural, where you could be manifested. It says all creation is awaiting the sons and daughters. Who are the sons and daughters? The sons and daughters are those who have been created in its likeness and who are operating as they were designed. Creation is waiting on us. The whole world is waiting on us. And it says that it groans and moans in earnest expectation that we will rise and take our rightful place as those who are to have dominion over this realm. We are to have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, every creeping thing that creeps upon the face of the earth. We are called to cultivate. We are called to take care of this ecosystem that we've been given. But we're not doing it because we're living inside of the three domains of mental, the intellect, the emotional, and the physical, and we're not operating as spiritual beings. So when we see the design of man and the purpose of man, which is even found in the scripture, says, what is man that thou hast created him, or man being male and female, a little lower than the angels. Now, when we talk about angels, we're talking about invisible beings. So we're a little lower than angelic beings or messengers because we have an earth suit and we can be seen in this density or this dimension, and it's purposeful. And without this body, you can't experience. Without these senses, you can't experience this realm. So it's important. But the word says to be carnally minded, to be driven totally by the sensory realm, that is to be driven by the realm of the intellect, the realm of the emotions, or the realm of your physicalness, is death. When you're driven by those three, your spirit man suffers. You can't kill a spirit, but what it does, it grieves the spirit. It's held hostage to, because the spirit never imposes itself. It has to be accepted. It has to be invited. And so once we yield our will, or the will of the physical man, the will of the emotional man, the will of the intellectual man, to the will of the spirit, then we are put in position where we can do things that we're not capable of doing as mere human beings. Then you're considered a divine spiritual being. As a divine spiritual being, you are a manifestor. You are a creator. And so you should be operating in life as a creative, realizing that you have to take responsibility for what is showing up. Manifest means the work of your hand. What have you done? And your hand goes beyond your physical hands, but your spiritual hands, your thought processes. If you're thinking on something that produces fear, that thing is going to manifest. Look at Job, his thought process of fear. He said, pre-adventure, my children have done something wrong. So he projected onto source. The source was one that if the created thing did not acquiesce to what it desired, that it would punish it. We're not created in that way. We were not created that if we didn't totally serve the Lord or serve God, that it would punish us. No, source came into this realm to experience this realm, but inside of whatever the sole purpose of the individual. My sole purpose is different from your sole purpose. The problem is we try to make this a group thing, but spirituality really is an individualized thing. Each one of us is an expression of source. Just as well as a rose is an expression of source, a weed is an expression of source, a dandelion is an expression of source. One is no better than the other. There are different expressions. Now, you may have an affinity for one or the other based on your likes, but that's based on you. But all creation was created as a manifestation of God in the earth. As flowers, as rhinoceroses, as ants, as birds. All creation represents the creator. And we have a hard time wrapping our minds around that, because we have defined God in a very, very defining way, specific way. But God is all. God is in everything. God is expressed as good as well as bad. There's different frequencies of God. But the question this morning is, are you aware that you are the manifester, the creator of the life you live? And now that may be difficult for some of us to wrap our minds around, because we're so accustomed to things happening to us. We're so accustomed to defining our lives as victims. But don't do that any longer. Define your life, define yourself, not as a victim, but as a participant. Be willing to say what is showing up in my life is a direct result of what I've been thinking. It's a direct result of what I've been imagining. John chapter 1 tells us that there is not one thing that is in existence that come into creation that has been manifested had it not been first imagined, or in first thought, then imagined, then spoken, held in intention, deliberately or by default. If you may not want to be in poverty, but if you're by default thinking about poverty and everything you do is to avoid poverty, that is what you're bringing into your life. You got to look at your motives behind what you do. Your motives, if the motive is to avoid, the very thing you're trying to avoid is the very thing that's going to manifest in your life. If your motive is wrong, then the outcomes are going to be wrong. That's important. So this morning, I want you to consider that you are the creator of the life you're living. Now, all that matters is right here, right now. Just as the potter was dissatisfied or saw that it was marred, it was not what. Sometimes you can create something that doesn't look exactly like you want it to look. You have the liberty to start over, and then what you've come to a better realization of is more clarity of what you want it to look like. Then you start over. And so many of us, we see that in relationships. Many of us has, when we look at our lives, we've had multiple relationships. And the reality is we keep having the same relationship over and over with a different person versus having a new relationship, because we think that if we just change persons, change partners, the situation's going to change. No, but if you have a thought process of a non-trusting, if you have trust issues with the last partner, you're going to have trust issues with this partner until you destroy that image and take it back down to base, the substance of things, and then bring it back up to what you want it to look like, what you want it to be, versus being held hostage to what has been. And too many of us are living in the past, and we keep recreating our past. That's why you have to be very careful when you get in groupthink, and how you're being defined. I don't define myself, even though I'm very culturally astute, and that I'm very I identify with my Africanness. I identify with my ancestral past, but at the same time, I have to be present to right here, right now, because we are always evolving. Things are always expanding, and so oftentimes we try to go back to the days of old, but you never can go back. Well, let me rephrase that. You can go back to the days of old, and you'll have that limited experience, and it'll ultimately end up the way it ended then. So we have to stay present to right here, right now. What is it you want to be experiencing right now? Then you got to look at what ingredients have gone into what I'm experiencing. That's why I said the Bible tells us, let a man or woman examine themselves. It's important that you always spend time in examination. Spend time in not only examining yourself, but taking responsibility. Don't say someone did something to you. In actuality, they may have done something to you, but what opened that door for that experience? And may say, you're kind of simple to think that, oh, I caused this to come into my life. You have over 60,000 thoughts in a day. And very few of us take time to examine what our thoughts are. And if we examine our thoughts, which are so fleeting, the thoughts are seeds that we're sow. You have to be conscious of the thoughts that you're sowing, the seeds that you're sowing. Now, not just one seed, but the seed that are continually being sown. Example, if you're watching something on TV that talks about a certain thing happening, if you're watching stories that talk about people being violated in violent ways, being stuck up and all those kinds of things, you're watching the cop shows, example, you're most likely are creating in your life experience those things that you see. You're going to be stuck up. You're going to have car accidents. You're going to have all those things that you see. That's why you got to be careful with the television. It's telling you your vision. And ultimately, you begin to envision it. You begin to have dreams about it. You begin to see those things show up in your life. You begin to deal with people in your life, like the characters on the soap operas. So your life become what someone has projected onto you. So what do? You start with the reality that I am the manifester of the things that's being manifested in my life. I am the creator of the things that have been created in my life. And now that's difficult to do, When you've been inside of a religious system that says to tell you to have Jesus take the wheel, a religious system that says that God is your pilot and you are the co-pilot. No, you are the pilot and the co-pilot of your life. God has equipped you. It says, whom God has called, it has equipped. Come on now. We have every form of spiritual gift. Take it back to Ephesians chapter 2 and 10. It says, we are source's handiwork, created with a consciousness to do good work. Created with the consciousness to do good works, which source prepared in advance. So the good works have already been prepared. Now, that's when we talk about the field of possibilities. I didn't want to go into the depth of the science approach that goes into atoms and goes into particles, goes into the molecules, everything that makes up the reality of matter. But science has proven out that nothing has a set path, but there are possibilities. So you are created with the possibility of being a millionaire, or you also have been created with the possibility of being a pauper. You've been created with the possibility to be walk in divine wholeness, or you have the possibility available to you to experience brokenness and incompleteness. So no one is assigned to any one path. It's the path you choose to create. You could change your life in a twinkling of an eye, starting right here, right now. Coming to the realization of this is what I desire, and then getting clear on what it will look like, and then holding that thing in intention. And then the work of your hands will be to rid your life of anything that is not consistent with what you want to experience. You cannot pour new wine in the old wineskins. You cannot expect something new to manifest in your life with the same environment. So you got to change your environment. Maybe it's just changing the furniture around in your house. Maybe it's getting rid of, taking the curtains out. You want to change things so you won't be on autopilot. Maybe it's going to work in a different way. Maybe it's sitting with a different group of people. Maybe it's changing your work schedule, or change the physical environment that's within your capabilities, so that you don't continue to operate with the same mindset. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You got to get a new mind. That old mind that has gotten you what you've been getting has to be eradicated. You got to put forth a new mind. You have a new images, new thoughts, new affirmations, a new intention. So you are the manifester. You are the work of the manifester. And like you are the work of the manifester, you are the manifester that should be creating the work called your life. So I challenge you this morning. I challenge you to take on life as a creator. I challenge you to take on life as a manifester. I challenge you to take on life as the God of your life. And so it is. Awesome. Let me see here. I pray something was said this morning that's been uplifting and encouraging. I'm going to bounce over here to the YouTube channel to see if I see any feeds there, anything there. I don't see anything being stated on that channel. And now I'm going to come back over here to the actual Zoom room. And I see we had quite a few participants this morning. It's good to see you all. I hope something was said that was uplifting and encouraging. So I want to say a couple things before we move on. First, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Again, I hope that this teaching has been edifying to you and that you can take it from information into inspiration and to that final act of application. If this ministry has been a blessing to you, consider being a blessing to it. Now, this appeal, if this appeal turns you off, then you got to ask yourself, what are you responding to? Are you responding to me, or are you responding to something that happened to that you have experienced in the past? I hope that this has had some level of value. And if it has had a level of value in your life, consider showing the value it has by sowing a seed into this ministry. Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living. You can go to oasisspiritualcenter.com. When you go to the website, you can go over to the tab, the giving tab, and there are different platforms by which you can sow into the ministry. You can give by way of PayPal, Cash App, you can give by way of our tithing app, or you can give by text to give. Now, if none of those work for you and you want to give, there's a number on your screen, 708-368-1076, which you can text, and you can say, hey, I want to make a donation, but I don't operate in either of those platforms. Here's how I can get it to you. So we have other ways you can get it to you. At the worst case, we can get it to the ministry through snail mail. Either way, we appreciate your seed. We make room for your seed, not because of need, not because of greed, but we understand the law of circulation. And so if this ministry has been a blessing, consider sowing a seed that we can continue to do the work that we've been called to do. Want to join me on Monday through Fridays? We have the 6 a.m. prayer meditation call. It is hosted by myself and other ministers and individuals who have taken on the task of making sure that our days are formatted in a proper way. It doesn't take a lot of time. We are all together about 15 minutes each morning, 6 a.m. Central Standard Time to around 6:15. So consider joining us. If you want more information about that, you can go to the website. Again, www.oasisspiritualcenter.com. Well, I'm going to see if there's any questions. I'm going to look here in the chat, and I'm going to see if there's anything I need to explore a little deeper before we close this morning. Courtney says, this came up for me earlier this morning: steps of creation, thought, image, held in intention, and spoken. We must understand the substance to manifest something. It has to do with your hands, the work of your hands. And just like the creator, the hand is not the natural hand first, but it's first to show your hand, how you operate. Like if you playing cards, you say, show your hand. I can see your hand. You know how a person operates. So you must operate as the God of your life, the creator of your life, the manifester of your life. And then you must have the corresponding work. Faith without works is dead. So there may be some things you must do in the natural realm, because the natural realm has been created, and you have to carve away and do something with your natural hand. But many of us make mistakes as we start with our natural to try to do something supernatural. No, you start with the super, and then you go to the natural. You start in the spirit realm and you end in the natural realm. Come on now, that's how we do it. Well, that's all I have this morning. I pray this has been a blessing to you. I'm going to close with the song that we started with this morning, and that was a song by Ricky Byers entitled Genesis. So I'm going to just play that, and you can drop off when you feel you've got what you need to get this morning. Thank you. I'll see you guys on Monday morning. My God, to reveal what was said in the beginning. I was walking, asleep, dreaming I was away. This world confused me. Led me astray. Yes, it led me astray. What could I do to please my mother? sleep. Oh, by the way of this world.